This is the brand new ttartisan's 100mm f2.8 2x macro tilt shift lens, and it sort of reminds me of those one-man band devices like Burt wears and Mary Poppins, because this lens, there's a lot going on here. There's so many options and things to do, and you're really only limited by your creativity. This lens is going to be attracted to both serious macro photographers looking for budget, very capable macro lenses, but then also just the tinkerers and the nerds alike that want to experiment with some really interesting parts of photography. Now, this lens isn't the only tilt shift macro lens out there, but it is the only 2x magnification one. And even when you compare it to the 1-to-1 magnification tilt shift macro lenses, those lenses are far and few between, hard to find, and extremely expensive. Albeit they're professional, highly regarded lenses, this lens really stands out by itself. The only lens that really even comes close is this macro lens here that has a tilt, but it doesn't have shift, and it's only 1-to-1 magnification. So that truly makes this lens a special unicorn right now in the macro world. Lens retailer Pergear sent me this lens, and you can check out the links in the description to purchase from them at a little bit of a discount. Let me try to unpack everything that this lens has to offer and why I think it's such an exciting lens. First, this is a 100mm f2.8 lens, and it can be used on full frame or APS-C cameras. f2.8 is letting in a ton of light, and that's going to give you some beautiful depth of field and bokeh for just some kind of normal type shots. You don't have to use all these gizmos and gadgets on it, and when you don't, this is just a nice 100mm fast prime lens. But of course, one of the things that makes this lens so exciting is that it has both tilt and shift functions to it. And those are camera movements that are independent of the camera's sensor. Let me try to explain how those work and what they might do for you. Tilt allows the lens to pivot with the effect of changing the focal plane. On a normal lens, the focal plane is basically a straight-ish line parallel to the camera's sensor. By tilting the lens, you can change that plane of focus to achieve some practical and creative results. In macro photography, this can be helpful to actually increase the depth of field, or what appears in focus. This lens supports up to ±8 degrees of tilt, controlled simply by a locking knob, and either moving the lens yourself or using this knob to precisely adjust the amount of tilt. But this lens doesn't just tilt, it also shifts. Shift is a lens movement that moves the lens parallel to the image sensor, the effect being that the image looks as if it was taken from a different perspective or angle. And this actually works because the lens is designed to project a much larger image circle than the sensor it's designed for. And in fact, on ttartisan's website, they show examples that this lens, if you don't use the tilt or shift functions and you only focused 1-to-1, can actually work on a Fujifilm GFX body, a medium format sensor. And once again, that's because it's designed to project a much larger circle over the sensor. Probably the most popular use case for shift is achieving parallel lines when the angle you're shooting at doesn't allow your sensor to be parallel with the subject. The common example and use case is shooting up at a very tall building, for instance. There's also creative use cases like appearing to shoot straight into a mirror, but then the camera is not actually in the shot. And this magic is done by shooting the shot with the camera just out of the mirror's frame and then shifting it over slightly. It's pretty cool. And in macro photography, it's actually just a practical way to shift the perspective ever so slightly when you don't want to adjust everything else in your shot. If you got your tripod set up and the lens, the camera, the lighting, and the subject all set up, but you just want to try a slightly different perspective, then you can use shift. And then this lens also has the ability to rotate, which doesn't have any direct effect on the image that you're getting. But what it does allow you to do is use any of these tilt and shift functions in virtually any direction for some crazy combinations. You do this by using a kind of finicky lock and button system that does a great job of keeping the lens from rotating when you don't want to, but when you try to make it rotate is a little bit hard and finicky to use. The other knobs and locking systems work much better. As mentioned, this lens has an impressive 2x magnification, which is new for this type of tilt shift lens, and also just really impressive in the macro world anyway, especially at this price. The magnification for macro lenses is measured by the size subjects in the real world are projected onto the image sensor. So a 1-to-1 ratio macro lens will project a subject onto the sensor the same size as it measures in real life, or as we would just say, its life size. A 2-to-1 magnification ratio like this lens is twice that amount or double life size. And let me just tell you, it's impressive to see this in action and what a difference that extra magnification makes. This lens is also manual focus and manual aperture only, but I think that makes sense for almost all applications in which you would use this lens anyway. I do have to point out though that the aperture ring is clicked, which you're probably sick of hearing this from me by now, but thank you. I much prefer this over declicked aperture rings. These 4 metal holes on the front of the lens are for attaching the included cold shoe mount for attaching lighting close up to your subject, which is pretty cool. Whether that's a flash or a continuous light source, then you can just put it right up here on the tip of the lens. All of this, and I haven't even scratched the surface of all the different possible combinations and applications that you can do with a unique, cool type of lens like this. You can really use it for just about anything, except I guess wide angle photography. But portraits, landscapes, cityscapes, macro photography, obviously. Then you can use the shift and tilt function for practical things, but then also just for creative focus and creative framing. And yeah, there's some cool stuff here. And I'm extremely pleased to see that it's launched at a very competitive price. It's worth it just for the 2x magnification feature alone, let alone the fact that it also comes with tilt and shift functions for a true world's first lens. Once again, check out the links in the description to see where you can buy this lens for the best price. It may not be a lens for everyone, but for those that are interested, especially in macro photography anyway, or just in tilt shift functions, then it's a very exciting release. If you enjoyed this lens review, then check out these other fantastic third-party lens options for mirrorless cameras in this playlist here. I've been trying out a bunch of really cool ones lately. I'll see you over in those videos, and as always, until next time, happy snapping.